Washington Examiner senior editor Kelly Jane Torrance. Kelly Jane, good to have you this morning. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't think, even Democratic colleagues of Bernie Sanders don't agree with that. Anderson Cooper later last night asked Pete Buttigieg if he agreed, and Mayor Pete said no. Yes, voting is a big part of being American, and he does think they should have it once they leave jail. But he said no, not while they're in jail. And I have to say, I don't think a lot of Americans are going to agree with Bernie Sanders on this, especially, as they brought up last night, people like the Boston Marathon bomber.
Yeah.
People think, if you do something that serious, you do lose some of your rights. That's why you're in jail. And so I don't think this is going to be very popular. I'm a little surprised that Bernie is making this an actual issue.
The other thing is, I don't know if they're actually up on the issues that matter to the American people at that time, being behind bars. Are they up on health care and, Medicare for all versus a different health care plan or the Green New Deal? So just getting the attention of the person to the issues that matter to the American people is also questionable, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Marie. I mean, people in America, the top issue in the midterms was health care. This is what people are worried about is, hey, I can't afford health care anymore, or I have concerns about what Obamacare is doing for affordable health care. That's what they're worried about. And it's actually kind of funny because last night Anderson Cooper asked Mayor Pete, why don't you have a single policy issue listed on your website? You don't even have a section devoted to policy. And Mayor Pete responded, well, people know where I stand on the issues. For example, I'm in the forefront of wanting to change the structure of the Supreme Court. That was the first issue he brought up. I don't think that's a winning campaign for 2020. I don't think Americans are most concerned about changing the number of members on the Supreme Court. And I have to say, Mayor Pete, he's been doing a good job of connecting with people. He's been going way up in the polls. I'm surprised that he would make such a mistake as to think that, changing the structure of American government is what Americans want to see right now.
But right now, it's about personality, and it's about authenticity, and it's Mayor Pete. It's a focus on him talking about what he's done in South Bend, Indiana, which, by the way, a lot of it sounds like capitalism because he talks about bringing businesses and residents back into the city just after the revitalization. It's literally as simple as filling potholes and changing and turning one-way streets into two-way streets in some fashion. And it's also his two doggone cute dogs and his husband. That's what it's about. His husband, Chasten, has a major social media game. He's hilarious. He doesn't get into politics. People like Mayor Pete because they like his husband.
I like the fact that he said, here's how to pronounce his name.
Right. and by the way, this is what Joe Biden doesn't have. People were very upset that Vice President Biden did not quickly respond to the allegations of him, grabbing on people, that it took him days. It took him from Friday to, I think it was Wednesday, for him to make a statement. Again, it's how are you connecting with voters? And it doesn't have to be policy. You can just Elizabeth Warren's got a tsunami of policy. She's got a policy.
We learned that from Donald Trump. You either loved his personality or you didn't. That drove a lot of things.
Elizabeth Warren's got a policy on breakfast cereal. And you know what? Nobody cares.
Well, I think what we've seen in the past, both in 2008, 2016, 2008, 2012, and 2016, is the idea that personality actually does matter. To start with this Bernie Sanders piece around voting, I actually agree with him to the but part of his statement, where I think that if you have served your time to society and you are now back, you're back in society paying taxes as a convicted felon, you should have the right to vote. Whether you're in prison and voting, I'm not sure. I think that's part of the punishment, but that's just me. But we need to overall look at our justice system and figure out, are we putting too many people in prison?
I want to point,
which is a larger question.
And by the way, the president just did prison reform, and he's actually focused on exactly that.
And a lot of the states already allow felons to vote in those states, which ex-cons don't even know that. I've interviewed people on the ground. They're saying, "Oh, I can't vote." I'm like, "Yeah, you can."
I think that's.
It's not just about personality. I mean, it's also about some of these policies that, frankly, don't make a lot of sense, like the Green New Deal, like Medicare for all. I mean, you're talking about capitalism versus socialism. That's what I think this election's getting set up to be. What do you think?
And none of the Democratic nominees right now, or the ones that are running for president, none of them, they don't differ very much from each other on any of these major policies. And I think we want to see some differentiation as we get down the line.
Really quickly, I want to add something about Mayor Pete. It's his ability to talk about his marriage to his husband and his faith that more than anything is resonating with young voters in the Democratic Party right now.
Because faith doesn't know party. I mean, I think that is really important.
But he's not afraid to talk about his faith, and he can explain why being married to his husband is important for bringing him closer to God. It's a huge issue, and not enough people are talking about it.
Kelly Jane, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much, Kelly Jane Torrance.